Hello guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Ino, Shizune and Tayuya? Part 2. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. This is why we don't let you lead on missions. A young teen with glasses and short black hair called. He sighed and scratched his head as he looked around. Well, excuse me. I didn't expect to get lost from just going forward. A girl just as young, short turquoise hair with a ruby clip called. She had on a red and white tank top and white forearm protectors. She wore white baggy pants that slightly hung off her hips and wore her forehead protector on her arm like Shikamaru. Would both of you shut up? I'm trying to sleep. The third and last member of the team called. He had on a long white shirt with a short blue jean jacket over it. He wore blue jeans and wore his forehead protector around his neck like a collar. When he opened his eyes, their eyes were yellow and his pupils were slit-like. Seriously, train. Do you have to do that creepy eye thing right now? The first teen called. Shut up, Yuryu. He shot back, his eyes returning to their natural brown. The young girl sighed and fell to her back. Oh man. At this rate, I won't be able to get any ramen today. She called and her stomach grumbled. Both of her comrades' sweat dropped. You ate 12 bowls before we got here. Mr. Ichiraku was crying tears of joy on how much of money you spent. Yuryu said, pushing his glasses up. Yeah, he said it was amazing that there was someone else in the village that could eat as much as what's that kid's name? Naruto. Train finished. He dropped down from the tree he was sitting in and stretched. Ryu's stomach growled again. She looked up at her two teammates with fake tears streaming down her cheeks. Feed me. Suddenly, Yuryu paused, turning on spot. Be quiet, someone's coming. He instantly jumped back into some bushes, Ryu and Train following swiftly. Seconds later, Naruto's team, dropped into the clearing they had just entered. They watched silently as the short one with blonde hair seemed to get upset and tell his two teammates to go on ahead. What's up with him? Ryu whispered, but neither of her teammates responded. She frowned and rose an eyebrow when they didn't answer and turned around. Looking back, she found both of her teammates bound and captured by enemy ninja. In the clearing, Naruto now stood with Neji and the others. Tenten looked around startled, finally registering the many chakra signatures around them. Surrounded? She asked, placing a hand on her weapons pouch. Naruto quickly pulled a kunai and chucked it to his left. Most likely shadow clones. He said as he jumped back as the area where he had thrown his kunai exploded. But that would mean our enemies are well beyond genin level, it has to be Orochi. Help. The voice of a young girl came from somewhere within the forest, stopping Naruto before he could continue his assault. It was enough time for the enemy to show themselves. The grass nin team from earlier dropped down from the tress, revealing that they were indeed clones of each member. Well, this just got a whole lot easier. Tenten said with a small smirk. Foolish girl. You shouldn't underestimate us unless you want to end up like this team. The nin threw Ryu and her team down in front of Naruto and the others. Naruto gazed down at Ryu, who seemed to be in pain. He frowned for a second before a smile began to overtake his face. Wow. You guys really did tuck up. He said as he began to take several steps back. Team Guy rose eyebrows at Naruto's demeanor. So you sensed it too, kid? The fox asked inside of his mind. Naruto mentally nodded, seeing the girl growing angry on the ground. But we can't let her have all the fun. Hey Lee. I bet I can take out more than you in 5 minutes. Naruto goaded. This instantly got a reaction as the bushy-browed teen's eyes burst into flames. How youthful to make this into sport. I shall accept your challenge, Naruto-kun. And if I cannot defeat more than you, then I shall do 1,000 curls. And if I cannot do 1,000 curls, I will complete the rest of the chunin exams while carrying Tenten on my back. A second later, an mace had collided with the back of Lee's skull. Like hell you will. Tenten shouted. It seems they are ignoring us. The grass ninja with his eye covered like Kakashi said. The others agreed by chuckling sinisterly. An action they won't live to regret. The leader said through his gas mask. Hey Ryu, you okay? Naruto asked the girl as she slowly undid her own bonds. Looking closely, he saw that she had what appeared to be a wasp stinger protruding. How do you know my name? She asked startled. Shichibi. He and Kyuubi are good acquaintances. He said naturally. Ryu beeped an eyebrow. So you are a Jinchuriki. I couldn't be. Before the two could continue their conversation, the army of grass nin clones began to rush in. Naruto and Ryu turned, getting back to back. A spark shot through them both, making their eyes widen. That was weird. They thought simultaneously. Naruto could hear the fox laughing inside his head for an unknown reason. He ignored it and prepared for battle. As the first nin came into range of Naruto and Ryu, Naruto felt the girl relax her body. She took one step forward and let loose a barrage of blinding punches and kicks onto the enemy. The clone seemed to be convulsing, not even having time to disperse as the small girl continued her attack. It was a skill that he wished he had, but because of some of the repercussions, had never tried to achieve it. Locking away your emotions while you're fighting makes it so you won't hold back, but it also tends to get the better of your senses. Going all but the final spin kick, Fuwu sent the clone flying and dispersing into a silent puff of smoke. Naruto looked over to Team Guy to see them dispatching of the clones, quickly and efficiently. Lee was tearing through them as if they were paper, while Tenten made his jaw drop by how beautiful and fluently she handled two cottages. Neji was swiftly spinning about his opponents, apparently jabbing at their body. Naruto rose an eyebrow as he noticed that it was the same way Hinata fought in the academy, albeit much faster. Looking at all four of the people around him, having fun with their would-be ambushers, Naruto felt a pang of guilt rush over him. He had just decided to get serious while these guys had been serious all along. Even by the way Fuwu was going about decimating her foes, he knew that she had never played around with her future. "Naruto, look out." Fuwu shouted and dived on top of him, just as large snake soared over his head. Naruto looked up with wide eyes as the snake landed behind them, turning to face its prey. The snake was as big as car and about 30 meters in length. Naruto scowled, both at losing his focus on the battlefield and at forgetting key factor in the chunin exams. He faced the grass nin team just to see one of their members dashing off in the direction that his own team had been going. "That's him, that snake bastard," Naruto groaned inside his head. "Naruto," Tenten called. "You two take care of that snake while me and the guys finish these clones off. Think you can handle it?" Naruto gave a thumbs up to the bun-haired girl. "No sweat." "You sure?" Fuwu asked. "You just spaced out, and if it weren't for me, you'd be getting digested right now." "Oh, shut up," Naruto replied, getting a cute giggle from the girl. He was even more impressed that even while in battle, she could still hold on to her emotions while trying to lock them away. This girl was strong, but being a Jinchuriki meant that you had to be. "Shall we?" the girl asked, holding her arms out, indicating for Naruto to go first. "Yes, we shall." Naruto elegantly pulled a kunai and flipped it reverse-handed. Fuwu held one upright in a fighting stance. They darted towards the snake, crossing in front of each other as they went. The snake eyed the two hungrily. Since Naruto was the first to reach the beast, it struck down at him. Naruto threw the kunai into the air and then used a substitution jutsu. He appeared in place of the kunai high above the snake. The snake's fangs embedded into the ground, giving Fuwu time to jump on its head and then leap upwards. Naruto grabbed the girl's hand and spun, slinging her even higher into the air. Fuwu threw her own kunai into the air above her so that Naruto could once again substitute and appear so high in the air, the snake seemed like a small worm. Flashing through hand signs, Naruto held his fingers to his lips. Fuwu smirked as she began to move her hands and form chakra. The chakra burned red until it burst into a ball of flames in her hands. She winked at Naruto. "Fuetin. K's Yori. Wine Javelin. Payton. Ryusei Aki. Meteor Fall." Naruto blew the powerful stream of wine down towards Fuwu's ball of dark flames. When the wind collided, Fuwu spun, slinging the now blue flames even faster towards the ground. The all-out inferno roared and seared even the air as it sped towards the waiting snake. The resulting impact created a huge explosion, sending a shock wave out in all directions. Team Guy was just about finished with the clones, however, once the blazing attack hit the ground, they were forced to move swiftly to escape the blast. The remaining clones in the clearing were incinerated, and some of the forest land around the area was reduced to ashes. Naruto began to fall back down towards the blazing ground. Looking at Fuwu, he saw that she had two fast-beating dragonfly wings on her back. She caught Naruto's arm and slowly took them to the others that were waiting. Seeing the shocked looks on the others' faces, Fuwu retracted the wings and looked away sadly. What was that? How are you two so strong, and why did she just have wings?" Tenten called. Fuwu's head was down and she bit her lip. The looks they were giving her were just like that of her own village. Fear and confusion. "It's Akeke Genkai. She's a distant relative of the Aburami clan," Naruto explained. Fuwu's head shot up and she stared at Naruto with wide eyes. Naruto had a small smirk on his face. She looked back and forth between Team Guy and Naruto. "Akeke Genkai?" Neji asked skeptically. "Yeah. My parents were from Tokigakur before it turned into a Megakur. Rain Village," Fuwu said, trying her hardest to play off of Naruto's bluff with the truth. "Oh right. I remember Dad telling me that some of Konoha's ninja were sent to Tokigakur after the First War. Most of them stayed to make sure the village could be rebuilt," Tenten noted. Neji closed his eyes and folded his arms, apparently accepting the answer. "My parents died after the war. My father couldn't take care of me and my mother died after giving birth to me," Fuwu said sadly, making Naruto frown. He knew all too well the pain of growing up without parents, on top of being a Jinchuriki. For some reason, he felt that he and Fuwu had a greater connection than anyone he had met in his life. Her mannerisms, her posture. They were all similar to his. But as her skills show, she probably had it worse than he did. A sound of groaning caught all of the genin's attention. "Excuse us, but can you untie us now?" Train called as he and Yuryu were sitting back to back by. "Who are you guys?" Yuryu straightened his glasses before clearing his throat. He walked over to Tenten and knelt before her, grabbing her hand. "Milady, we are but a humble team of genin from a megacur. We are here to assist you and should be regarded." Suddenly Yuryu froze up as Fu jabbed him with a sharp stinger protruding from her wrist. He fell over and Fu began to drag him away by his leg. "Come on Casanova, we get enough of this in our own village." Tenten's sweat dropped but blushed nonetheless. It was rare for anyone at all to hit on her, so it actually just made her day a whole lot better. She held her head up a bit higher, unbeknownst to her two teammates. "I hate to cut this short, but I have a feeling that my team is in over their heads right now," Naruto called, preparing to run after his team and the grass ninja that had gone ahead. When he turned, Fu suddenly grabbed his wrist. Naruto faced the girl to see her with a slight blush and uncertain look on her face. "You sense it too, don't you?" she asked. Naruto looked at the worry in the girl's eyes and once again saw himself in them. He smiled warmly at the "Yeah, but I have no intentions of fighting it. I promise." The girl looked at him for a second longer, still unsure. What confused her even more was the fact that she was worried about this person she had never met before. Maybe it was just because they were both Jinchuriki, which would have been a likely and plausible reason. However, she felt something more than that. Something about him and him alone made her want to be there by him. With a sigh she stepped next to the blonde. "I guess we don't have a choice now, do we?" she asked in fake exasperation. Naruto rose an eyebrow. Fu, what are you doing? What does it look like?" "I'm coming with you." "But you said yourself, it's something up ahead. But I won't let you take on by yourself. You saved me and my team, so now it's time for me to help you out." The smile that she gave Naruto reminded him too much of Hinata's, and he found himself looking away with tinted cheeks and scratching the back of his neck. "Naruto, what are you two?" Before Tenten could finish, Naruto and Fu darted forward, going a speed that made Rock Lee's flames ignite once again. Pulled by the urge to catch, or best the two, Lee threw himself forward as well. Having no other choice in the matter, Train, Yuryu, Tenten and Niji began to follow at a leisure pace. As the two darted side by side, Naruto and Fu glanced at each other from the corner of their eyes. When their eyes met, everything around them seemed to fade. "Ah, here are the two honorable bastards now." The gruff voice of the Kyuubi boomed as Naruto and Fu appeared between two similar cells. It was obvious, once again, that the Kyuubi cell was bigger. However, the seal on the Shichibi's cage seemed to be in perfect condition. "Do I even want to know what you two were talking about?" Naruto deadpanned. He gazed over to Fuu's cell to see the Shichibi hovering by 6 extremely fast beating wings. The monster was a large blue beetle with 6 wings and a stinger, which indicated 7 tails. With a large horn on its head and 2 freakishly large arms, the monster looked more grotesque than anything Naruto had seen in his life, including the Ichibi. But outside of appearances, Naruto could feel a strong sense of pride radiating from the demon. "Long time no see, shithead." Fu called to the demon with a wave. "And to think I was starting to miss your company." The Shichibi feigned hurt and chuckled along with the Kyuubi. "So, do you guys have a history, like with Kyuubi and the Ichibi?" Naruto asked. The Kyuubi shrugged. "Nah. We just like to beat the shit out of each other once in a while." "What do you mean beat the shit out of each other?" "You used to whip my fast from the Bunta's castle to that damn snake's lair." Naruto and Fu couldn't help but laugh at the demon's unfortunate friendship with the Kyuubi. When things began to grow quiet, Naruto saw the two demons eyeing him. He looked between them both in confusion. "What?" "Something on my face." That's when he turned his gaze to Fu to see the girl laying him somewhat dangerously. The Shichibi folded its massive arms. Emotions cannot be hidden inside of the mind. "Hit, run for it." Naruto swallowed as he saw Fu lick her lips. With a gleam in her eyes, she jumped towards the blonde, pinning him to the ground in one swift movement. "Honestly, she reminds me of the Nibi. Two-tailed cat," the Kyuubi said with a shiver, though with a hint of reverie. Shichibi nodded his head in agreement. "I think she would have made a better tenant than I." Then the demon grew a small smile. "And I think you would have much more preferred to meet the Nibi today than myself." Everything went silent again, including Fu, who still had Naruto pinned to the ground and was only an inch from his face. Both genin looked up towards the Kyuubi to see the already red fox blushing. "Oh, no way." Naruto called through fits of laughter. You've got a crush on the Nibi." "Hit, I will give you nightmares until you're 66 if you don't drop it right now." The Kyuubi huffed and then turned to the other cage. "And now I remember why I used to beat your face all the time. You couldn't keep your damn mouth shut. Hey, by the time you told her anything, the Gobi would have had her eating out of his paws." Five-tailed wolf. As entertaining as this may be, phew, we need to get back now. Naruto slowly inched the girl from atop him, getting a sad groan from her. He stood and offered the turquoise-haired girl a hand. The girl grinned and faded away without taking his hand, leaving a stunned blonde in her wake. I'm in trouble, aren't I? Between the nice Hyuga girl and phew, you're a dead man. Naruto held his head in frustration as he began to fade from his mind. I'm not with either one of them and shit's gonna hit the fan. Out in the real world, Naruto and Phew slowed to a halt as they came to a clearing. Naruto instantly frowned as the grass nin he was after was nowhere in sight. Instead, he found Sasuke unconscious on the ground, Sakura with a kunai in hand, as well as having her hair cut, and the three sound nin, Kin and her team, facing the beat-up girl. In the 3 seconds it took for Naruto to register the scene, his anger flared. In the blink of an eye, he dashed into the clearing, sliding to a halt in front of Sakura. What the tuck is this? He growled out. Sakura's eyes widened as Naruto appeared seemingly from nowhere. Her eyes took in his features, his stance wide and his hair blowing beautifully in the wind since his hit eye hung from the back of his cargo pants. His dark blue shirt had the sleeves trimmed neatly where he had torn them. Her confusion of Naruto's attire and her curiosity in it was overshadowed by the joy she felt from seeing her teammate. She began to sob lightly. Naruto. It's alright, Sakura. I won't let them hurt you anymore. Naruto spoke darkly. Everyone whom had come with Naruto watched the scene from their positions around the clearing. Naruto could even feel Shikamaru and his team nearby. Naruto eyed the 3 sound nin in front of him. His glare pierced all 3 of them as his eyes began to tint from blue to red. Naruto-kin whispered, taking a step back. Is that the Sharingan? The mummy-like one asked to no one in particular. I'm not waiting to see. The last one shouted and held his palms forward. There were holes in his hands and he laughed hysterically as he blasted a sound wave at Naruto and Sakura. The ground exploded where Naruto had just been, throwing dust up all around the clearing. What just happened? Yuryu asked, worried for the blonde that Phew seemed to have taken a liking to. He dodged it, but why is he so fast? Neji spoke with a bit of venom. Naruto's speed rivaled, if not surpassed that of Lee's at that moment, with his weights on. Neji wouldn't have thought it possible, especially by someone he knew was considered the dead last of that year's graduating genin class. In the clearing, Naruto stood on a branch of the tree where Sasuke's body was resting. He held Sakura bridal style, his gaze still set as stone on the 3 below him. Fast little punk. Zakuzu called and aimed his palms up at Naruto. He began to fire rapid sound waves. Naruto would seem to vanish and reappear on another branch, still in the same position with Sakura along for the ride. The pink-haired preteen was beaming. The wind blowing through her hair as Naruto sped around the moves made her feel like she was flying. She hadn't yet noticed his eyes. Stay still, damn it. Getting frustrated, the sound nin threw a kunai with an exploding tag up at the tree. Naruto tossed Sakura upwards, making her yelp ironically girlishly, before flaring through hand signs and inhaling deeply. Fuetin. Kazuyori. The wind javelin tore the tag to shreds, as well as deflecting the kunai. The bladed wind slammed down right in front of Zakuzu, knocking him off his feet. Naruto caught Sakura again without so much of a twitch. This time, Sakura did notice his eyes. Her gaze turned to a bit of confusion and horror. His shining red eyes may have been pretty, but the feral glow of them chilled her. The blonde dropped down to the forest floor. He walked over to the indentation of the tree and set Sakura down, ignoring the way her eyes never left his face. He slowly walked back to his initial position as the 10 sound team eyed him warily. They were all having second thoughts. Naruto-kin whispered again. His eyes frightened her beyond anything she had felt in her life. When she was directly in his sight, she completely froze. Why are you attacking my team? For a second, all she could hear was the silent whistle of the wind as it slowly began to build in the forestland. The rustle of fallen leaves grew louder and the smell of both nature and ninja began to overload her senses. Naruto's question slowly began to register, but all she could do was gaze upon his glowing red eyes. The wind pushed leaves past him and it looked as if nature itself refused to touch the boy. The overhead canopy cast rays of light throughout the clearing, yet none of the peak light touched the blonde Jinchuriki. Stand aside, dope. Sasuke's voice snapped Kin from her fright-induced stasis. But she almost fell right back into it as she caught sight of the Uchiha. Black flame-like markings were spreading over his face and arm. A sickening purple chakra seemed to be flowing around him. She knew what that meant. Sasuke was using Orochimaru's curse seal. Sasuke. With both the Kyuubi's chakra and the tainted chakra of the curse seal bellowing in one area, everyone around felt the cold air of death wash over them. Even Phew fidgeted as the mixed chakras made the Shichibi writhe in his cage. No one except for Phew knew exactly what they were looking at in that clearing. Go sit with Sakura so you won't get hurt. Sasuke chuckled as he flexed his fingers. The power flowing through his veins felt unreal. He felt as if he could kill his brother 10 times over. Naruto grimaced as his nose burned. The overwhelming smell of decay and snakes filled his nostrils. It was all wafting from Sasuke. Sasuke's sight set onto the sound team. When he took one step forward, Naruto appeared right in front of him. "Get out of my way, Naruto. I'm going to make them pay for thinking they could attack us." "Sasuke, that power you're using is bad for you." Sasuke paused. Then he began to laugh. "How can something that feels so good be bad for me? Get out of my way, dope, or I'll kill you too." Naruto didn't move. Him and Sasuke stood face to face, neither blinking. Naruto's calm gaze and Sasuke's hysterical smirk sent shivers down the spines of all who could see them. "Who is he, you know?" Train started whispering. Fu's eyes showed sadness, but she nodded anyway. "Yeah. He's like me." Naruto sighed as he knew Sasuke wasn't going to back down on his own accord. He was going to have to force Sasuke to calm down, and by the feel of his chakra, that wasn't going to be easy. The Gaara sighed deeply as she stood atop the surface of a small pond she had found a few hundred yards away from the clearing where her teammates were. She just wanted to calm down and clear her mind. She had removed her black undershirt, revealing nothing but a fishnet top, albeit she had wrappings over her chest. She kept her pants on, knowing that should anyone find her, she would be damned if she gave them a free show. Her mind drifted to the recent event in the clearing with her teammates. She shouldn't have went off on Shino like that. At first, she was planning on going to apologize to him, but knowing Shino, he would ignore her until he had cooled off for a bit. So she was going to give him his space and time, and use her own time to cool off a bit. She wondered what Kiba thought about the little tirade. "He's probably pissed at us both," the preteen thought. Kiba was all about teamwork and companionship. Though he was arrogant, Shino and Hinata knew the real him. The him that would do anything to protect his friends. When she had compared him to how he was in the academy, she was surprised that it was usually Kiba the one calming the other two down when things went wrong on missions and such. If only he could feel that way about their other comrades. "Byakugan." Hinata cried suddenly, trying to focus her mind on her current position. She sighed heavily and slid her right foot forward over the water. Not a single ripple appeared. It was as if Hinata was gliding over the water instead of standing on it. Then she dipped her foot in, creating only one ripple. After a second of standing completely still, she spun, creating a wave of water all around her. The water seemed to slow down as her eyes took in the 360-degree environment. She created the chakra blades again and began to cut at the water. Perfect lines of the water began to form, and as fast as she was going, it looked as if she were creating a pattern in the water. It was like art, the sun casting shadows on the water in the form of whatever slashes Hinata had made to the water wall. Then almost as suddenly as she began, she abruptly stopped, dropping to her knees on the water and panting heavily. The shredded water wall collapsed back into the pond as just a few drips. Hinata moved to a sitting position on the water, having enough chakra control to do it almost effortlessly. She tilted her head back and took in deep breaths. The technique was more draining than she let show, especially after performing it several times throughout the day. If it weren't for the fact that her team kept dozens of soldier pills, she would never be able to get a good amount of practice in. After several minutes of rest and staring up at the clouds, something she learned to enjoy after watching Naruto and Shikamaru do it sometimes, she stood and ate a soldier pill, ready to continue her practice. However, several swift-moving chakra signatures caught her attention, and she instantly activated her Byakugan, jumping back into bushes and out of sight. Several seconds later, a group of 5 ninja landed on the lake in a blur and continued forward with no signs of slowing. Hinata's eyes widened as she saw that the person leading the group of Anbu was their proctor, Anko Mitarashi. "That's the lady that hit Naruto-kun." She frowned up at the memory and bit back a curse. More approaching chakras from behind her were detected by her Byakugan, and she knew it was her teammates. "Should we follow?" Shino asked in his normal monotone, apparently having cooled off enough. Or at least, he wasn't upset enough to let his feelings get in the way of something potentially important. Hinata nodded and dashed forward after the special Jonin and Anbu, her own team going as fast as they could. "Why do I have a bad feeling about this?" With Anko, she flew through the forest at such an alarming rate that even the Anbu had trouble keeping up with her. Her eyes were narrowed, but her chest heaved, her fear only evident by this action. She was scared. Orochimaru was a sneaky son of a fish, and now she had just learned something that would make the genin kill themselves upon finding this out. He had 2 chakra signatures. She didn't understand what that meant at first. When the Hokage explained to her that his sensors had picked up 2 separate chakras, both belonging to Orochimaru, she had thought that maybe it was a Kage Bunshin. But when he also told her they were not distributed chakras and indeed fully intact whole signatures, her stomach grew light. Her mind instantly drifted to the tucked-up experiments that he had performed on her long ago. So what has he done now? And to who? she thought as she bounced off of the side of trees, showing the Anbu just how agile and flexible she was when need be. Her thoughts were interrupted as she felt several signatures following behind them. She groaned, picking it up as a genin team. With a sigh, she landed on a tree that was coming up in her way and pushed off of it, dashing past the Anbu, leaving them in confusion as she soared backwards and almost collided with Hinata herself. The Hyuga yelped and slipped on the branch she was just about to land on, but a hand grabbed her wrist, using her falling momentum to swing her parallel to the branch, upwards, and then letting her land on unsteady feet. When her daze was gone, she looked up into the serious face of Anko Mitarashi. Instead of her usual smirk, she held a worried look, as if she was wondering what to do with the Hyuga girl. Kiba and Shino landed on the branch behind Hinata. Anko folded her arms. "You kids shouldn't be following us. Something dangerous is up ahead, and I don't have time to try and protect you. Go east and try to head to the tower as soon as possible." For a moment, Anko sighed in relief as it seemed as if the Inyazuka and Aburami were indeed going to take her orders unquestioned, like true shinobi. However, the young Hyuga still had her bloodline activated and she was looking in the direction the Anbu continued to travel. The girl seemed as if she were straining herself to see further than was naturally allowed by the Kekkei Genkai. "Hey, kid, are you listening?" Anko put a hand on Hinata's shoulder. "Naruto-kun, what's happening to him?" she whispered to herself, though all present heard. "Naruto?" Anko's eyes widened. That brat was starting to become a pain in the face already. Without another word, she turned and followed after her Anbu, forgetting all about the genin behind her. "Hinata, what's wrong with Naruto?" Kiba asked worriedly. He wouldn't admit it to his face, but Kiba still held high respect for Naruto, even if he was known as the dead last. Anybody who tried to stand up to Sasuke on a constant basis was either a brainless dumbass or had balls of steel. Naruto fit both categories. His chakra, it seemed, so demonic. And so does Sasuke's. It would be best to avoid them. Shino added bluntly. Hinata's gaze turned to Shino, shocked. Kiba even glared at their partner. "Shino, they're our friends." "Well, at least Naruto is." Kiba spoke before Hinata could go off, which for some reason, she was doing a lot more lately. "But if the Anbu and that woman is involved, it is far beyond our control." Hinata turned from Shino angrily. She knew his cold logic, but she never felt this angry about it before. Shino was known to make the wisest decisions among them, but it left a lacking luster when it came to other teammates. Now that she thought about it, maybe their team was far too introverted. They cared for each other, but held their other comrades in far less of a light. And the sad part was it was Kurenai-sensei's fault. She never had them socialize with the other teams after graduation. She never even mentioned the others outside of telling them what they needed to do better. They may have been genin cells, but they were all ninja of Konoha. Their allies, all of them, were the most important part of the village. She would be having a talk with her sensei when this was over. "I don't care what you say, Shino, but I'm going to find out what's wrong with Naruto-kun. You can tuck tail and run if you want." She spoke with as little venom as possible, trying not to make their already falling teamwork collapse completely. "Hinata, whatever has happened to make you change so is truly intimidating." Shino removed his hands from his pockets. "Why do you insist on being so distant?" Hinata bit her lip. She didn't mean to sound distant. She just wanted to prove that she could make choices and do things on her own. It seemed like everyone was making mistakes today. Shino stepped in front of her. "We'll go to Naruto, but I want a full explanation of what's going on when we arrive at the tower. Beyond being comrades and teammates, I am your friend Hinata and I don't want to see you in such conflict with yourself. I am worried." Kiba grinned, happy that Shino had finally came out and said what he was truly feeling. Hinata had "Alright," Hinata replied. The Hyuga heiress was actually at a loss for words. Shino rarely showed any type of emotion. And to do so while they both knew they were upset was nothing short of a miracle. She smiled, starting to remember how important both Kiba and Shino were to her. Even if she wanted to do things on her own didn't mean she needed to push them away. "Let's go." Ino Yamanaka was not easily scared. On several occasions, mainly around Halloween, Shikamaru and Choji, and sometimes even her father, would try to play pranks on her to get any type of reaction. All the times, she had brushed them off as petty annoyances. Never once had she even flinched. So why was she scared shitless now? The two people standing several yards in front of her were people she had thought she had known for several years now. You had Sasuke. The boy with dark eyes that seemed to suck you in, skills that would make the average genin drool, and he was an Uchiha, making him every girl's fantasy. Then you had Naruto. The kid almost as loud as Sakura, with ocean blue eyes that she secretly knew shined in the sunlight, too bright a shade of blonde hair, but ironically no longer wearing the scream, aim, fire orange jumpsuit. So what was wrong with this picture? Right, Sasuke had just threatened to kill Naruto with some weird purple chakra swirling around him, and Naruto's eyes were glowing red, not in any memories she had of either one. Shikamaru, what the hell is going on here? The Yamanaka diva asked, eyes and mind trying to both fool themselves into making a logical explanation to what was being watched. The hell should I know? Shikamaru replied, but his eyes were glued to the scene as well. Their last partner sat behind them, mouth agape and chip in mid-travel to his mouth. The young girl's thoughts were swiftly trying to break down the scene, the way any Yamanaka would, however, several missing key factors just made figuring it out impossible. Why was Naruto's eyes glowing and what the hell was happening to Sasuke? Without even a clue as to what was going on, she couldn't fathom an answer. Then there was the fact that Sasuke had just threatened to kill Naruto. As far as she could tell, Naruto had arrived and gotten the situation under control, which was surprising by itself. A lot of things had been worrying her ever since they started these damn chunin exams. First was the new appearance of Naruto, which she did bepize regardless of what the others thought. His attire, along with his attitude, were obviously different. He was acting much more serious than he had in the academy. And from what Sakura had been telling her, he was acting more different than he had been a week ago. Then when she saw Hinata, she knew something was wrong. People don't just change like that overnight, do they? Though she didn't have much time, she looked at herself before they entered the forest of death. From what she could tell, she had changed the least out of everyone. Sure, she had built up some of her skills by training with Asuma-sensei and her team, but she spent more of her time trying to look good and thinking of ways to wow Sasuke. But her world had just been shattered. Sasuke, no matter how gorgeous she thought he was, had just threatened to kill his own teammate. Now, if she hadn't seen all the changes as of late, Ino probably would have dismissed the comment. However, since the chunin exams started, her brain had been working overtime, finding more questions than answers. By now, anything dealing with Sasuke was like looking at a video game you want to play, but having much more important things to do. So the latest surprise to Grace Ino Yamanaka was herself thinking. That bastard. What's his problem? Her eyes immediately widened. Did I just call Sasuke? She shook her head, writing it off to the stress of the exams, finally getting to her. Naruto Baka was annoying, so maybe Sasuke was just trying to shut him up. No, even she couldn't make an excuse like that for him. When this was over, she was going to need a very, very long rest. Because this was one hell of a reality check. Naruto and Sasuke still faced each other, Naruto using the few seconds he had to formulate any way to calm him down or subdue him in as little time as possible. Nothing seemed like it'd work with no knowledge of what was happening to Sasuke. All he knew was that he had a power that had obviously come from the snake bastard Orochimaru. Where the bastard went was beyond him, but he was fast enough to get in and get out before even the Anbu could show up. What's wrong, Dobe? Scared yet? Sasuke's left wrist twitched and Naruto knew he was out of time. He jumped back just as Sasuke brought up his left hand, a kunai coming upwards as well, aimed at slashing Naruto in the face. Naruto landed in front of the sound team, making Kin fall to her butt. She looked at the back of Naruto's head as her body shook violently. She couldn't move. Shit, let's get the tuck out of here. Come on Kin. The bandaged one shouted. However, Kin seemed to be frozen in fear. He growled and began to dash away. Wait, we're just gonna leave her? Zakuzu called, following after his partner. Hell yeah. Let her die on her own. Naruto heard the two, but decided to keep focused on Sasuke, who was now stalking forward with an arrogant smirk, the kunai held lazily in his hand. So you're protecting enemy ninja now, Naruto. Doesn't that make you a traitor? I'm not the one who attacked a comrade. Naruto spat back calmly. Now stand down Sasuke, or I'll defend myself and turn you over to the Hokage when this is over. As if. I'll be turning your body into the morgue. Sasuke's eyes seemed to darken as he activated his Sharingan. He licked the kunai, much like a snake, before dashing forward towards Naruto. Naruto parried the first strike with the kunai he had been preparing to pull out. Catching Sasuke off guard with a block, he thrusted his shoulder into Sasuke's abs and pushed him backward several feet. Naruto threw the kunai he held in his hand toward Sasuke's feet, forcing him to jump back even more. Gyutin. Kazuyori. Naruto fired the drilling wind toward Sasuke's feet once again. However, he frowned as Sasuke copied his hand signs and put his fingers to his mouth. Gyutin. Kazuyori. Sasuke repeated back and fired Naruto's own move towards him. Instead of aiming at his feet, Sasuke aimed at Naruto's chest. Naruto didn't have a chance to move and was sent hurtling backwards, the front of his shirt ripping to shreds from the powerful wind. Naruto put a hand on the ground and pushed himself up, flipping him over Kin so that he wouldn't hit her. He landed on his hands and knees right behind the sound Kunoichi. She flinched but otherwise didn't move. Good. I'll kill you both at once. Kaiten. Gakakyu no Jutsu. Sasuke inhaled once more and unleashed large ball of flames towards Naruto and Kin. Still frozen in fear, Kin stared straight forward as her death seemed imminent. Naruto growled and scooped the girl up in his arms, much how he did with Sakura, and jumped straight up. The fireball scorched his foot and collided with the trees behind them, igniting a blaze just like that. Naruto landed several yards to the right of his initial position, however, he dropped to one knee and set Kin down as a sharp pain shot through his burned foot. Still weak, dope. Don't tell me that's all you've got after all the big talk you did earlier. I can't go in like this, not with the fox's chakra, Naruto thought to himself. He was about to try to stand again until he felt a tug on his arms. He looked down into the crying face of Kin. "Ah, thank you, Naruto-kun," she said before passing out due to shock. Naruto nodded, even if the girl couldn't see him. He glanced to his left. "Fyu, come get her," he called in a dangerously low tone. Without a question, Fyu darted out of the bushes she had been hiding in and towards Naruto. Sasuke saw the girl and rushed towards her. In the instant that Sasuke had appeared in front of Fyu, Naruto had appeared at Sasuke's side. The sheer speed that they both were showing caused less trained eyes to blink in disbelief. "She didn't do anything," Naruto called, driving his fist into Sasuke's face. Sasuke left the ground, soaring backwards, but regained his balance in a flip. Naruto winced again as he landed on his burned foot. Fyu, though she was startled by Sasuke's sudden attack, continued on to grab Kin and then head over to where Sakura was watching in horror. Fyu turned to Naruto with sad eyes and a pain in her heart. She knew what he was going through right now. Fighting a teammate all the while trying to keep himself from going insane from using the Kyuubi's chakra. She wanted to help, but she didn't want to be a burden to Naruto. "Who are you?" Sakura demanded, glancing between Fyu and the unconscious Kin. Fyu frowned at the pink-haired preteen. After being attacked by enemy nin, she couldn't blame the girl for being suspicious. And knowing this, she took a sitting position between Sakura and Kin to keep her from doing anything she'd regret. A friend of Naruto's. Her gaze remained on the battle between Naruto and Sasuke. Sakura seemed to relax a bit, but the feeling of the destructive chakras put her on alert again. "Why is Naruto doing this?" Sakura whispered, though from the tensing of Fyu's shoulders, she had heard. "What are you talking about?" Fyu asked, not turning towards the girl. "Why is Naruto attacking Sasuke-kun?" For a moment, Fyu felt like backhanding the girl, but held in her anger, for Naruto's sake. "Didn't you hear that Sasuke-kid threatened Naruto? This is just self-defense. And if anything, Sasuke's the one that's been attacking this whole time." "No. Sasuke-kun just wanted to protect me," Sakura called urgently. Fyu shook her head in disgust. "Are you stupid? Naruto was the one protecting you, or did you forget that? He had the enemy on the ropes until Sasuke got up." Sakura was prepared to retort, but having enough of this conversation already, Fyu jabbed her in the arm with the same stinger that came from her wrist. Sakura yelped but fell asleep soon afterward. Fyu growled at the girl. "Great, now I'm in a bad mood and hungry." "What was that? You call that a punch?" Sasuke chuckled at the glare Naruto shot him. "This is more boring than I'd thought it'd be. I guess I'll just end this now." Sasuke darted forward again, making hand signs faster than most chunin could. Katen. Hausenka. Fire style. Phoenix flower. The dozens of smaller fireballs seemed to hit their mark and kick up dirt and smoke as they slammed around Naruto as well as hit him. Sasuke charged right into the dust cloud. He wasn't out of sight of the others for long as he came charging out of the opposite side of the smoke cloud, holding Naruto up by the throat. He slammed Naruto into a tree, holding him pinned with one hand. Fyu's eyes widened at the feral look in Naruto's eyes. He snarled, struggling against Sasuke's grip. The swirling dark chakra only seemed to grow around Sasuke, the marks spreading until they covered more than half of his body, and his Sharingan was a sickly yellow. A confused look formed on Sasuke's face as red chakra began to bubble around Naruto. His whisker marks grew darker, and his hair seemed to grow just a bit, or maybe it just became spikier. Naruto's grip on Sasuke's wrist grew, and the Uchiha winced as he was forced to let Naruto's feet touch the ground. He tried to tighten his grip, but Naruto slowly overpowered him, pushing his hand back. A flare of red chakra covered Naruto, though it didn't have a definite shape. "What the hell are you?" Sasuke growled out as he was the one struggling to shake Naruto's grip now. Naruto's anger didn't seem to subside, even with the chakra no longer growing around him. "Maybe I'm what you want to be." Naruto spoke darkly before pulling Sasuke by his wrist into a vicious knee to the gut. A loud crack was heard around the clearing, as it was obvious Naruto had broken something with the force of the blow. In the process, Naruto had also dislocated Sasuke's wrist. The Uchiha was in too much pain to even scream and settled for dropping to his knees. The boiling red chakra that had been surrounding Naruto slowly began to dissipate. Naruto took deep breaths as he gazed at Sasuke's cowering form, the marks of the curse seal fading as well. Naruto looked around, feeling more than seeing the gazes of the other genin around him. Naruto the Kyuubi started in his mind. However, the blonde's gaze fell onto Fu. The fear in her eyes reflected that of the villagers before they began to attack him. Calm down, Naruto. Naruto's breathing quickened. He could only picture the gazes of all the others on him. Instantly, chants of monster and demon began to play in his head. He held his head in pain, not wanting to be seen like that again. Not by his friends. Naruto, it's not like that. As if he hadn't heard him, Naruto darted from the clearing, taking the only route that seemed unoccupied by eavesdroppers. And just as Naruto left the clearing, Anko, the Anbu, and Hinata's team landed. Anko looked around startled, sensing Naruto's chakra getting further and further away. The other genin teams began to make themselves known, each one by one coming from their hiding spots. Shit, what the tuck happened here? Anko demanded the confused and scared-looking genin. Hey. Fu's cry attracted her attention as the Anbu held the girl down with her arms pinned behind her back. Sitting in an indentation of a tree with an unconscious leaf nin, while another was currently gasping for breath and damn near broken on the ground, didn't look good for a Kinwaichi of another village. Anko was definitely not in the mood for games and swiftly walked over to the downed girl. She pulled out a kunai and held it to Fu's throat, bringing protest from Train and Yuryu before the glare she shot them effectively silenced them. What the tuck happened here? She demanded again. Sensei, don't. They had nothing to do with this. If anything, that girl helped the situation. Ino was the first to cry out. That fish didn't help. Sasuke gasped from on the ground, still clutching his stomach but also his neck. Once again, Anko's attention was drawn elsewhere and to Fu's relief, she dismissed the girl. However, the Anbu did not release her. Anko stormed over to Sasuke, kicking him to his back and ignoring the howl of pain it caused him. She moved his hand forcefully and felt her stomach drop at seeing the handiwork of her former sensei on the boy's neck. She sighed as half of her fears were confirmed. Shit. She growled out, having the urge to cut the skin from Sasuke's neck just to prevent looking at the damned seal. Oh no, what's wrong sensei? Tenten asked, sending worried glances in the direction Naruto had ran off to. Anko looked around the confused genin, finally registering that this confrontation is much too public for her liking. She looked back at the Anbu. Let them their damn scrolls and escort them to the tower. Have medical nin waiting and alert their jonin senseis. Separate the Uchiha to his own quarters. Keep the Omegaker team under surveillance until you contact their sensei and alert the Hokage of the new issue. What about this girl? One of the Anbu asked, motioning towards the still unconscious form of Kin. Keep her with the AIM team. Get moving, now. Anko ordered and the Anbu began to round up the genin. Where's Naruto-kun? Hinata demanded as the Anbu tried to herd them away. Don't worry. Anko spoke without looking back. The worried look in Anko's eyes surprised Hinata. I'll find him. I promise. Hinata wanted to argue more but found it in her best interest to stay silent for now. Something big was going on, that much was for certain. She silently nodded her thanks to Anko before following orders and heading away with the Anbu and the other teams. Anko waited until the Anbu and genin were out of sensing distance. She bit her thumb and flashed through hand seals before slamming her palm to the ground and summoning a house-sized snake. She jumped on its back and issued a simple command of go as the snake darted forward into the brush after Naruto. That brat. Anko called aloud though she didn't mean to. She grit her teeth as she could feel his chakra up ahead. But it wasn't why she was in such a rush. Naruto was headed straight for Orochimaru. If you would have said something weird was happening she would have completely agreed with you. It had taken her all of 2 minutes of being in her brother's company to know that something had changed. If the less glares and wetter environment due to no sand conjuring was any indication, she'd say that hell had indeed frozen over. What? The monotonous voice of the person on her mind asked. What the hell was she supposed to say? Hey Gaara, it's been over a day since you've killed anyone, want to talk about it? Ever since he had went to have that talk with that blonde kid, Naruto, he had seemed a lot more refined than normal. Hell, for the fact that he was refined in itself was a miracle. He hadn't threatened her nor Kankuro at all. He hadn't said one word of mother, and he definitely hadn't killed anyone since they entered the forest of death. In a nutshell, Gaara wasn't acting like Gaara. Their sensei Baki was too busy to notice anything different. The Jonin didn't want to have anything to do with the group in the first place. He was focused on the mission at hand, which was plotting behind Konoha's back. Much good that would do, seeing that if Gaara was acting differently after talking with a Konoha ninja, then they were probably already compromised. Not that she would care though. She had no grudge against Konoha, albeit she felt they were arrogant and lazy bastards. You look like you swallowed a bug. Gaara simply stated, making Tamari's eyes widen. Sitting to their left, Kankuro was in the middle of messing with his puppet when his hand stopped moving and his mouth dropped open, just like his sister's. Did he just make a joke? They thought simultaneously. They couldn't tell, seeing as his face remained as stoic and passive as they'd ever seen it. Orochimaru flinched as his gaze instantly landed on her at the sound of his name. She rubbed the back of her neck as she sat with her legs hanging from the side of the branch they were on. Is everything alright? Gaara beeped and well he did something with his face to show confusion. Why wouldn't I be? Temari gulped. She couldn't understand why she felt no malice when he spoke. Now it was her turn to beep an eyebrow in confusion. She would word these next words carefully. You don't want to hurt anyone? Okay, so that wasn't so careful, but Gaara's not so murderous attitude was really throwing her off. And now for the icing on the cake, the one moment that would leave Temari completely speechless, Gaara smiled. Well, I do want to hurt Kankuro for not showering this morning, but by the time this is over, we're all gonna need the water. Gaara dropped down from the tree, ready to continue on towards the tower after being fully rested. Temari, as stated, was completely and utterly speechless. Kankuro's jaw, if possible, went even lower. Then after a moment, he rose an arm and sniffed. He's right. Naruto dashed through the forest as fast as he could with his burned but slowly healing foot. The tears in his eyes were slowly drying as he focused more on the pain in his foot than the pain of feeling isolated from Fu and the others. He was starting to get upset that the fox wouldn't heal him as fast as he usually did. After going several hundred meters in silence, he slowed down near a clearing, landing just on its outskirts in a tree. What the hell, fox? He cried out. Oh, so I take it you are willing to listen now? Naruto frowned and sat down, rubbing the reddened appendage. He set his hit eye on the branch next to him and held his foot in his lap. What? What the hell do you want? You need to calm down and go back. How could you expect Fu not to be worried when you were using my chakra? How could you expect the others not to wonder what was happening? They weren't just scared of your chakra, they were scared of Sasuke's as well, well Fu just hoped you wouldn't lose yourself. Fu wasn't scared. Naruto slowly stopped his massaging. He gazed upon the ground in front of him. He had impulsively assumed they were all scared of him just like how the villagers were. It wasn't the group as a whole, since he knew that people would always fear him for his burden. Others would see him as a weapon, and others would border the line between those two and acceptance. For all it was worth, he didn't give a shit. He just didn't want certain people to see him in that light. Hinata, Fu and her group, Shikamaru, Choji, and maybe even Lee and his group. The others didn't really matter. No kid Naruto, we have company. The fox growled inside of his mind. And I can't read his mind. And with that, Naruto knew self-repentance time was over. He stood up and slowly drew a kunai. Where is the chakra signature? Why can't I sense it? It's far too high level for a genin such as yourself Naruto, and that is no insult. Do not stay here. Even with my help, if you want to stay sane, you will die. Now Naruto was scared. No matter how strong he had become in those 2 days, no matter how much training and effort he had put in, if the fox said he would die even with his help, then he needed to go, and fast. Without even needing to sense it, Naruto had a feeling that he knew exactly what the chakra signature belonged to. Naruto. A female voice, though with a much more feminine undertone than he would have imagined, called to him from behind. He turned around to be met with the sight of a dispersing giant snake and an extremely worried-looking special jonin by the name of Anko. The young sensei landed right in front of the blonde, not even 2 inches from him, letting him get a view of her cleavage that most men would kill for. Anko sensei. We need to. I know. Come on, before he. Ah, how good of you to join me, Anko-chan, Naruto-kun. Shit. Both Naruto and Anko muttered. The bristling feeling of Naruto's hair standing on end was enough to let him know that he and Anko were in deep shit. Slowly turning around, Naruto came face to face with one of Konoha's biggest threats. Anko put a hand on Naruto's shoulder and squeezed slightly. Orochimaru. What an unpleasant surprise. She called, though Naruto could feel her hand shaking a bit. He looked up into her eyes and saw the swelling of different emotions. She was trying her hardest to stay calm and keep her emotions in check, however, the fear was evident. I'm hurt, Anko-chan. You didn't want to see me. The snake bastard slowly made his way to the center of the clearing. Naruto was almost frozen in fear as the man leaped killing intent. If it weren't for the Kyuubi unleashing its own for Naruto, he would have probably tried to commit suicide on the spot. The man folded his arms and smiled, showing Naruto exactly what the devil looked like. He's Orochimaru. Naruto breathed out. He couldn't believe it. He was nowhere near ready for something like this. Anko's gaze never left the Sannin as she formulated what to do. There was no way they'd be able to outrun him, and fighting him was no better. If they didn't get a miracle, and fast, they were going to die. What are you doing here? Why are you in the village? Anko called out. Orochimaru chuckled, sending shivers down the two younger nin's backs. This was definitely not good. They were losing the battle of wits. Orochimaru didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked directly into Naruto's eyes, freezing him in place. His snake-like eyes silently studied the ocean blue of the Jinchuriki, reading him like a book. Anko looked down at the boy, taking her eyes off of Orochimaru for the first time. Shit. Snap out of it, kid. She wanted to say, but couldn't find it in herself to do the same. I find it unsettling that the leaf leaves its security so lax during the chunin exams. I'm just paying my contributions to this little fact. The old man has gotten soft over these years. How noble of you to point out our mistakes. Naruto called, surprising both Anko and Orochimaru. The special Jonin's stomach dropped lower, if possible, when she noticed Naruto's redder eyes and slit pupils. His voice was more guttural and held a darker edge than it did before. Always happy to oblige, Naruto-kun. I don't believe we have formally met, Kyuubi container. No, I don't believe we have. I've heard enough about you though. You were kicked out of the village for being a traitor, doing inhumane experiments under the Hokage's nose, and for just being an all-around weird son of a fish. Naruto dropped down to the clearing right in front of the aging Sannin. Orochimaru's smirk faltered just a bit. You've done your research. I'm flattered. The honor is all mine. There's no end to how much I want to thank you for showing those pathetic villagers what fear truly was. I bow to you. Naruto knelt before Orochimaru, making Anko's mind completely halt. She watched the scene unfolding in front of her in disbelief and betrayal. Orochimaru gazed down at the kneeling blonde with as close a face of shock as he could show. Then his shock slowly turned to mirth as he began to chuckle. I wondered how the pariah would have grown up with such a burden inside of such a hostile territory. I guess my assumptions were not far off. You have already learned how to utilize the Kyuubi's chakra as well. Yes, I have. However, this is the extent of my power. Naruto spoke disdainfully. Orochimaru shook his head. Do you seek more power, Naruto-kun? Naruto, what the hell are you doing? Anko shouted, finally coming back to her senses. Naruto stood up and faced the woman. What does it look like? Did you really think I still held allegiance to this god-forsaken village? After all they've done to me? After every single last day going through strife, wondering if my own sensei would kill me when he got the chance? All of the backstabbing bullshit that I've grown with, what normal human could stay sane through that? Naruto chuckled. Hell, I still wonder why you of all people aren't just like me. Anko's heart skipped a beat. Naruto, she bit back tears at hearing that. All that time had he been playing her and the Hokage? Had he known about the invasion just to lead them into a trap? What valid arguments, Naruto-kun. Yes, why don't you join us, Anko-chan? I'm sure that the accommodations of this village cannot be quite ideal. Orochimaru stepped past Naruto, facing Anko who still remained in the tree. Anko began sweating before drawing a kunai. I don't care what you say. Both of you'll die for this. She threw her kunai at Naruto in blind fury. Orochimaru made no move to stop the kunai, wanting to gauge the boy's strength. Naruto, expecting the move, simply reflected the kunai like he had done before the Forest of Death and then caught it. Forgive me, but may I handle this? She doesn't seem as compliant as I'd hoped she'd be. Naruto held the kunais reversed-handed as he talked to Orochimaru. He smiled darkly up at the special jonin. As you wish, Naruto-kun. But please be quick and don't kill her. She can be of use to us. Capture her swiftly. Naruto nodded and blasted off of the ground towards Anko. The woman didn't get a chance to put her guard up as Naruto's form rocketed into her midsection and knocked them both backwards into the thick forest. Anko landed in a bush with Naruto landing right next to her. You tucking traitor. She roared, however, when she noticed the extremely scared look on Naruto's face, she calmed down. Anko-chan, I won't be able to keep the facade going for much longer without having to actually go with that sick freak. I'm letting the Kyuubi temporarily have control of my speech and mannerisms, but I still can't fight him. I have a plan, but we're going to need to cooperate completely. Anko looked into his cerulean eyes and saw the many layers of anguish that he was going through. With the Kyuubi at its closest to having control of the boy, along with having to act like he was betraying the village, Naruto was going through a personal hell that she couldn't even fathom. If anything, the boy was showing what it took to be a real shinobi and utilizing the one element of the shinobi code that was needed to become an elite ninja. Deception. However, to successfully fool a Sannin was going to take more than just deception. The fox's trickery was truly marvelous. Alright, Naruto. But please, be careful. She said as she grabbed his shirt. I want to have a chance to apologize to the brat for earlier, so get us out of here alive, Fox. Hey, kid, I like her. When this is over, maybe you should try. No, Fox. Naruto deadpanned, leaving the fox laughing his head off at the blushing blonde. Anko rose an eyebrow but said nothing. In the clearing, Orochimaru felt the fluctuating chakras and assumed a small scuffle had occurred. He would have gone to see for himself, however, he was on the boundaries of a certain other chakra that he couldn't stray too far from. So standing in mute silence, he contemplated how much of an asset the demon boy could be to his plans. He was an unseen variable that just so happened to play in his favor. But he wasn't stupid. Orochimaru trusted no one but himself and maybe, just maybe, his right-hand man. The child would be an asset, yes, however, he knew nothing of the boy. His attention and focus had always been Sasuke. The power the boy had was still dormant and remedial compared to that of his brother. But he was still an Uchiha and his Sharingan was as good as any. Not that there were many to choose from in the first place. Now Naruto, that was a different story. He wouldn't dare try to take his body. The fox would reject or kill them both in seconds. He doubted that the seal on Naruto would allow him to attempt it anyway. The boy's father was far more troublesome than many nations knew. But as much disdain as Orochimaru had for the leaf, he held complete and utter respect for the fourth Hokage. Sure, he wanted to kill the stupid bastard for becoming the Hokage when the title should have been his, but the power that he proved to hold over both the shinobi world and civilians was admirable. Orochimaru had been unable to do any of his experiments, and even Danzo's route had to be extremely cautious while the fourth was around. But that was off topic. Naruto himself seemed to be growing almost in a mindset that his father had. While his father wanted to protect Konoha, albeit with a no-nonsense attitude, Naruto seemed to want to be rid of it just as much. Ah, the Namikaze bloodline and their determination was truly a fascinating thing. Maybe if he let Naruto mate and breed with one of the girls he had under his wing, he'd be able to study the Namikaze line further. But that would have to wait, seeing that it all came back down to the fourth Hokage's seal. As long as Naruto had that seal and the Kyuubi remained inside of him, the child was nearly invincible to Orochimaru. So it was better to let the bait hang while the biting was good. I have her, Lord Orochimaru. Naruto called as he came back into the clearing, looking a tad beat up but nothing bad, carrying Anko unconscious over his shoulder and tied with ninja wire. Excellent, Naruto-kun. You are indeed a skilled shinobi. Your talents will not be overlooked. Orochimaru walked over to the blonde and Naruto knelt before him again. Now listen carefully, Naruto-kun. Until I can gauge your true loyalty, I'm going to have to do something that you're not going to like. Naruto tensed at that and the fox grew silent. Suddenly, Naruto's eyes shot up into the face of the Sannin as he slammed his fingers into Naruto's gut. Naruto felt the Kyuubi's chakra slipping slowly out of his grasp and soon the fox all but vanished from his mind. Naruto dropped to his knees coughing up blood and clutching his stomach. He glared up at Orochimaru. What the hell did you just do? I've sealed your use of the Kyuubi. Forgive me, Naruto-kun, but I can't let you continue using that power, especially with the risk of you doing something upsetting during the chunin exams and exposing me. You will continue on as if you have never seen me, and when the time comes, I will call you with that seal. Naruto groaned, his vision blurring. He tried to call the fox but couldn't even reach its chakra. He groaned and forced himself to look calm as he answered Orochimaru. Alright, but will you remove the seal when the time comes? Of course, Naruto-kun. Now, for the next part. Orochimaru stepped over to Anko and rolled her to her back. He moved her head so that he had a clear look at the curse mark. He opened his mouth and bit over the seal, making it glow again, and Anko cringed in her sleep. Naruto looked in horror. What are you doing? He called, trying to hold his anger. Orochimaru didn't answer until he watched the seal pulse for several seconds and then fade back to normal. I have reawakened and upgraded the seal I gave to Anko all those years ago. Now when she comes to, she will be under my influence. She won't be able to spoil our little secret, Naruto-kun. Naruto begrudgingly nodded at that and just thanked Kami that Orochimaru trusted him enough to not speak on his own. Then his eyes widened. That's it. He sealed the Kyuubi so that if I do try to talk, he or someone he has watching us could easily silence me. Damn the snake, he's not a Sannin for nothing. Naruto grit his teeth but held in a growl. He needed Orochimaru to think that he was still loyal to him. What do you want me to do now? Orochimaru-sama. Naruto had to force out the honorific as if he were trying to choke back vomit. Orochimaru chuckled and turned from the two young shinobi. Head back to the chunin exams. Go about it as if nothing has happened. However, wait for her to wake up and explain everything I have told you. I must be going now, for our other friends are waiting. Orochimaru leaped up into the trees, headed away from the tower. Oh, and Naruto-kun. It would be wise not to cross me. With that, the snake Sannin left a trembling blonde and unconscious snake Jonin. What do you mean we're suspects in an unassociated case? If it's unassociated, then why the hell are you keeping us here? Phew, sit down and be quiet. You're not helping us get out of here any faster. It's not fair, Yuryu. We didn't do anything. The turquoise-haired girl spun on her heels and glared at the spectacled preteen. They were inside of the tower, however, they were in a holding cell room. One door, a one-sided mirror and 4 stone grey walls. 3 chairs sat in the middle of the room, 2 being occupied by Train and Yuryu, while Fu angrily paced the floor. An Anbu stood in front of the door, while Ibiki himself stood in front of the 3. In the corner of the room, Kin had yet to awaken. If anything, you should be questioning her. Fu pointed to the still knocked out girl. She attacked Naruto-kun's team, and Naruto-kun came to rescue them. He even went as far as rescuing her when his own teammate tried to viciously attack her. Ibiki's interest was piqued by the statement. What do you mean his teammate tried to viciously attack her? Fu looked up at the man and noticed that he didn't seem as scary as he had at the written portion of the exam. She didn't know why, seeing that if they were supposed to be getting accused of something, then the man should have been exerting his full kai on them. So not wanting to look a gift horse in the mouth, she sat down and calmed down. Afterward, she explained everything from her team meeting Naruto and Team Guy, up to the point of Anko arriving. Ibiki's face showed a stern concern, however, he didn't show just how upset he truly was. Anko went after the brat, but they're not back yet. Which means that they had to have run into. Ibiki-sama, we have word that Anko and Naruto are on their way to the tower. The Anbu team found them halfway here. Ibiki frowned. What the hell? They were on their way back. Then that means they didn't meet Orochimaru after all, then why did it take them so long to start returning? Knowing Anko, she would have knocked the brat out and dragged him back by his hair without a second thought. Something weird was going on here. Excuse me, sir, but what's going on? Train asked. Ibiki met the boy's gaze and saw a dead serious look. It's none of your concern. You will remain here until we get the story from the other teams and your Jonin sensei arrives. Until then, get comfortable. Ibiki turned to walk out of the door. The Anbu stepped aside and opened the door. When Ibiki was next to him, he whispered. Be nice to them and alert me when the sound Kunoichi wakes up. The Anbu gave a minuscule nod and shut the door behind Ibiki. Train glared at the Anbu and then faced Fu and Yuryu. Something's not right. He was worried about something. Plus, these are the chunin exams. They wouldn't have went off on us like that because they know teams can kill other teams. Something that's not supposed to be here is causing a disturbance in the village. Yuryu nodded, pushing his glasses up on his face. It may have something to do with the strange chakra that the Uchiha was using. It was not an Uchiha trait and it seemed to influence the boy's aggressiveness greatly. Fu looked between the 2 boys in confusion. What the hell are you talking about? Speak normal Japanese please. Train and Yuryu chuckled at the flustered girl. Train put an arm around the girl's shoulder, pulling her clothes and activating his Dijutsu, making his eyes as yellow and his pupils slit, just like those of a cat. Fu shivered at the close-up view of the creepy eye technique and she shut her eyes tight. Listen closely Fu, the Grim Reaper is going to eat your soul. No. The girl screamed and jumped onto Yuryu's lap, making the chair fall back. Yuryu grunted from the impact and rolled Fu from atop him. Damn it Train. Why must you scare her now? This is serious. Yuryu scolded as Train laughed, holding his side. He wiped a stray tear. It's just too easy, haha. His face froze however as he felt a sting in his side. Fu stood next to him, pouting but with the stinger still in his side. No sense of humor he called before collapsing to the ground. Fu stuck her tongue out and flopped back down in her seat. The Anbu watched with mild interest, though he did stifle a laugh at Fu's reaction. Fu, what we mean is that something else besides the chunin exams is happening that has the Leaf Village on edge. It could be anything from an intruder to a potential attack threat. And with so many other villages having ninja positioned here, it would be the perfect time for a covert insertion. Yuryu explained. Fu nodded her head in understanding. But who would dare attack the Leaf Village? The Leaf, Sand, and Rain villages are all allies. Kumo and Iwa are still scared of it as far as I know, and Itagakure was just created no more than a few months ago, right? Yes, but that is all face value. Yuryu continued. Our village has a standing peace with the Leaf because of the aid we received during the Great Shinobi War. And of course Kumo and Iwa are still afraid of the Leaf, but together, what's from stopping them from posing a jointed attack? Then you have Itagakure. It may have been created a few months ago, but it has grown at such a substantial rate and no one knows who the Kage is. How do we know that they aren't in league with each other? Fu frowned. But there aren't many teams from Iwa or Kumo here. Then you have the one team from Odo and several from Suna. We're the only team from AIM and we know our Kage would never do anything like this. Which makes the biggest candidates Iwa and Kumo. It's not Iwa or Kumo. The 2 AIM nin glanced back at the now awake Kin who sat in the corner. You're up, what do you mean it's not Iwa or Kumo? Yuryu asked. Kin leaned up, tears in her eyes. She looked at the Anbu whom was preparing to turn around and go get Ibiki. I'll explain everything. The remainder of the Konoha 12, minus Naruto and Sasuke, all sat in an open, circular room of the tower. They were preemptively given scrolls and escorted to the tower, all having similar yet distant thoughts on their situation. The group sat in an awkward silence as they all had their thoughts. The Anbu hidden in the corners watched stoically as the students awaited their Jonin senseis. First up was Hinata, who sat Indian style in a meditative position with her eyes closed. She was obviously upset and seemed tense despite the calming position. Her thoughts were along the lines of Anko taking too long to get Naruto and hoping that they made it back soon. She was worried about the blonde and wanted to know the full story of what had happened before they showed up. However, the solemn gazes throughout the group made the tension too much to bear and she stayed silent. Diba sat next to Hinata, stroking Akamaru and thinking the same thing. He wasn't as worried for the blonde as Hinata was, but he was still worried. The scene they had come upon was indescribable, and with Kiba's limited brain span, there was no point in trying to make sense of it. All he knew was that something big had to be going down if the Anbu had to escort them to the tower. Shino stood by his two teammates, leaning on the wall. He kept his gaze on the floor in front of him, not that it would make a difference with the shades. The Aburami was trying to read the vibes of the others, but the overwhelming sense of confusion and fear pretty much spoke for itself. Without a verbal lyric of what happened before he and his team arrived on the scene, he would be in the dark. So the logical thing to do was just wait. Shikamaru sat with his back leaned against the opposite wall of Hinata's team. He had his eyes closed and a scowl on his face as if he were asleep. However, he was far from it as he contemplated everything that they had just seen, piece by piece. First off, Sasuke's situation made no sense with no prior experiences with the power. He and his team had only arrived when the sound team had started picking on the girl, and Sasuke was already unconscious. So there wasn't much he could deduce about Sasuke's condition. However, Naruto was a different story. The boy had already been acting different when they had met up for the first part of the exams. And then he showed just how much he had changed when he protected Sakura and even fought against Sasuke. He was much stronger than he was in the academy, but the strangest part had to be his red eyes and chakra. Shikamaru didn't know how to describe it, but he felt a raw sense of fear overwhelm him when Naruto used the chakra. He had to use all of his wits just to keep from running away in fear of the chakra. Then you got the Anbu showing up and now things really get confusing. The mark on Sasuke's neck caught his attention and then Naruto running off into the forest topped it off. Something was definitely wrong and it surrounded both Naruto and Sasuke. Taoji was still eating, of course, but taking longer to chew his food. Probably something that everyone around him had felt, fear was the main feeling on his mind. Though he wouldn't mindlessly run from Naruto, that chakra was pretty intimidating. All he wanted to do was ask Naruto what it was about, but that'd have to wait until he arrived. Ino sat with her legs pulled up to her chest and eyes on the ground. She didn't know what she was feeling, trying to think of the Uchiha she had claimed to be in love with, but finding her mind drifting only to the fear she had of feeling Naruto's chakra and the fear of hearing just how bloodthirsty Sasuke had sounded. She was trying her hardest to remember what her father said to do in a situation like this, but for the life of her, she couldn't remember ever going over a situation like this. So with the only forefront facts being that she knew nothing of Naruto and Sasuke, and that both of them well surpassed her and her team's skills, she needed to reevaluate everything she had planned out for herself. She was going to slow down and start looking at things with a more open mind. But that was easier said than done. So as of now, Ino Yamanaka could not move toward the future. Niji's thoughts were plain and simple. Fate was working in overtime today, and only time would tell what the outcome would be. Tenten sat next to the standing Niji with a book on different short swords open in front of her. She was really worried about Naruto and Fu. When she looked into Naruto's eyes, her own fear of him was completely overshadowed by the pain that the boy looked to be in. She had wanted to run out to him and make him stop, or to at least help calm down the irrational Uchiha. But she had been cemented to her spot by the overwhelming chakras. There was nothing she could do. Then the Anbu took Fu and her team away when they hadn't done anything. The bun-haired girl just wanted this to be over with and hopefully, she'd be able to meet up with her newfound friends again. Lee was as quiet as he had ever been in his life. Leaning on the opposite side of Tenten from Niji, his gaze scanned the ground as he was lost in thought. He had been tracking Naruto's team in order to fight Sasuke, whom he had heard was the rookie of that year's graduating class. In his search, he had also found out that Naruto was the so-called dead last of that year's class. So his joy was sparked when he saw just how strong Naruto truly was, and his mind instantly made the connections that if the weakest person of that class was that strong, then surely Sasuke had to be something special. Lee sighed, shaking his head. That line of thinking disappointed even himself. He was the dead last of his own graduating class, and now here he was almost as strong as Niji. But that was only the first part of his falling mood that day. After following after Naruto and coming to the scene in the clearing, he was left speechless at Sasuke's attitude. To threaten to kill your own comrade was beyond unyouthful. it was downright criminal. As cold and distant as Neji was, he was still a team player mostly. In the end, however, Lee was able to smile. As the optimist of the group, he had no choice but to think of what would happen if he was to face Naruto later on in the chunin exams. So holding on to that one line of wishful thinking, Lee stood up a bit straighter, anticipating that time where he would be able to show off his most youthful skills. Sakura sat alone, in the farthest northern part of the room. She looked around at all of the sullen faces and couldn't help but feel down herself. Something was happening to her teammates and she was worried sick. First that weird snake guy attacked them, dressed as a grass nin, then he bit Sasuke and gave him a weird mark on his neck. Then when Naruto showed back up, he and Sasuke got into it, and with her limited fangirl attention span, it was obvious that Naruto had attacked Sasuke, which she knew was a blatant lie. Thinking back on the confrontation, Naruto did get in Sasuke's way, however, it was Sasuke himself that threatened and attacked Naruto. As much as she didn't want to believe that, she had seen it with her own eyes. And now that the Anbu were involved, lying would get her into more trouble than she would want. So now it came down to getting Naruto in trouble, or Sasuke. A quick blush crossed the blossom-haired girl's face as she remembered how Naruto had come to her rescue. Where was her mind when she was talking to Fu if she could remember that now? With nothing but a setting sense of confusion washing in over her, Sakura decided to drop the whole thing completely. She was almost in the same position as Ino, however, there were just several things that she couldn't admit to the others or to herself and especially Naruto. The door to the circular room opened and all eyes drifted to the intruder. Ibiki stepped in and gazed around at all of the children before sighing and shutting the door behind him. He casually strode to the center of the room, returning the gazes of each and every one of the genin there. In the middle, he stayed silent for several seconds, gauging the looks of them all. While some were passive, most held loathing, likely due to the haste treatment they had gotten on entering the tower. But he was impressed that none of the children jumped up or shouted at him for an explanation. I take it you all are wondering what exactly is going on here, right? He spoke to drop a bit of the tension in the room, however, he kept his voice stern to let them know that he would not tolerate anything but the utmost respect. The several nods and grunts gave his answer. Then the girl that he identified as a Hyuga rose her hand. Ibiki acknowledged her. "Ano, sensei. Where is Naruto-kun and Mitarashi-sensei?" Hinata asked. "They are currently on their way here." Ibiki smiled, remembering that she was the girl in the classroom that had been talking to the blonde kid. It seemed even with her playing hard to get, she didn't want to lose the boy. "Now before I answer any more of your questions, let me make this clear. We will not divulge personal information on Naruto or Sasuke until more facts are discovered and your Jonin senseis arrive. Even then, most of what you saw was classified, so you all will be leaving here with more questions than answers, is that understood?" That defeats the purpose of us asking questions, then Shikamaru thought, though he nodded in understanding anyway. "Now, I have some questions for you all, and I need you to answer with nothing but facts and the truth." Ibiki released a bit of kai to emphasize his point. Seeing the shivers go down the genin spines, he knew he had gotten their attention. How did Sasuke Uchiha end up in the state he was in when Anko and her Anbu team arrived? The genin looked between each other, wondering whom to designate as the speaker. Letting the question roll around for a bit, Ibiki looked over to the oldest team. "You." Tenten squeaked and shut her book, blushing from the attention. She scratched the back of her head sheepishly, finding the movement quite contagious, and groaned. "Well, me and my team arrived following after Naruto. Sasuke was already unconscious, and Sakura looked to have been attacked by that team from Itagakure." At this point, Ino spoke up. "She was. My team and I arrived because we felt the disturbance. We got there a few minutes before everyone else, but since we were all low on chakra, we would have been no help to Sakura." Ino felt like that was more of an excuse now though. Even with their team low on chakra, they could have overpowered the sound team with numbers. Ibiki nodded at the girl and then looked to Sakura, who seemed to be trying to shrink into nothingness. He turned back to Tenten and motioned for her to continue. Naruto got upset at seeing his teammates in such a position and jumped in to intervene. There was a sound ninja with holes in the palms of his hands. He began to fire chakra-enhanced sound at him and Sakura, but Naruto protected her the whole time. After realizing that they were no match for him, the sound team prepared to retreat, however, the Uchiha woke up at this point. Tenten spoke with a bit of malice, gaining supported nods from many of the other ninja present. "So Sasuke fought the sound team?" Ibiki asked. When Tenten shook her head, he rose an eyebrow. So far, everything the girl from AIM said was true. No. He was going to, but Naruto stopped him. I don't know what Naruto was thinking, but seeing as the Odo team was going to retreat anyway, there was no need to continue after them. Plus, Sasuke seemed to be more aggressive than what we've heard about him. We think it may have something to do with that weird purple chakra he had been using." Ibiki nodded once more. It was a logical and sound conclusion, also most likely correct. He knew very little about the curse mark itself, outside of what Anko had told him, and apparently it was a stronger version than the one he had given Anko 13 years ago. Sasuke didn't like Naruto getting in his way, and he threatened to kill him. Ibiki's eyes widened. There was no playing around either. I could sense the full intent of it rolling off of Sasuke. By now the Odo team had ran, leaving behind that girl who was frozen in fear of whatever chakra Naruto and Sasuke were using. Sasuke still tried to attack the girl, though she wasn't any threat to them, and Naruto began to protect her too. When she passed out, Naruto called for Fu, the girl from the AIM team, to take her to safety. When she appeared, Sasuke attacked her as well. The whole time, Naruto only attacked back to protect others. He was even injured by Sasuke's fireball technique. After Sasuke used another fire attack on Naruto, he pinned him against a tree. That's when Naruto began to use some weird and extremely frightening red chakra. Tenten visibly shivered as she remembered the overwhelming fear that had frozen her in place along with the others. He overpowered Sasuke. All he did was squeeze his wrist, and then he hit him in the gut, making the purple chakra go back into Sasuke. After that, the red chakra left Naruto too, but before we could go to him, he ran. Ibiki had gotten upset near the end, wondering if Naruto had somehow lost control of the Kyuubi. However, upon hearing that he had simply used the chakra to subdue Sasuke, his fears were put to rest. He was actually impressed with the boy, though he did have mixed feelings on getting in the way when Sasuke opted to attack the Odo team. On one hand, he could understand why Naruto would have tried to stop him, but these were the chunin exams. Sasuke had the right to attack them. Not that Ibiki was saying that it would have been better. If it wasn't for Naruto intervening, then Sasuke would have been allowed to use the power of the curse mark to his heart's content. Though he didn't like hearing that Sasuke had threatened to kill a comrade not one bit. Can this be confirmed by all here present? Ibiki asked, looking around at all the genin. Almost instantly, most of the room nodded. However, his gaze dropped onto Sakura and Ino. Sakura was on the verge of tears while Ino fidgeted with a frown on her face. She looked up at Ibiki and flinched under his glare. She shakingly nodded as well. And you? Sakura looked up at Ibiki with a single tear sliding down her cheek. She looked around the room at the rest of her comrades. Most of them looked upon her with disgust, most likely having a feeling that the pink-haired teen was going to make up an excuse or take up for Sasuke. The look from Hinata was the worse, while Ino's looked sympathetic, yet scrutinizing. After several seconds of sitting under the burn of Ibiki's stern eyes, Sakura dropped her head in defeat. It's all true. The words left her lips like air, barely audible but heard by all. The respectful nods her way were missed as her eyes were on the ground in front of her, tears hitting the stone floor from the now crying preteen. Ibiki showed no sympathy for the girl and found it almost pathetic that she cried at a moment like this. They were ninja, and making a choice as simple as this was child's play to what would happen on the field. He thought that he had proven that point when he talked to them earlier that day. You say that the Uchiha was already unconscious when you all arrived. Then you were the only one there to know what happened to him, right? Ibiki asked Sakura. She looked up with pink eyes that were starting to swell. Yes. We were attacked. Stop. The Anbu captain interrupted. I'll discuss that with you privately. Many of the others present took note of it, hoping to ask Sakura about it later. As the room fell into a short silence, the door opened. The Anbu from Fuu's holding room motioned for Ibiki to come. Ibiki nodded and dismissed the genin without a word. When the door was firmly shut behind him, the genin all let out sighs of relief. As some began to ponder all the happenings, while others conversed amongst themselves, Ino looked over to her childhood friend. Sakura was shaking as she tried to hold in tears. The preteen blonde hesitated for a moment but decided to play the bigger role and walked over to the blossom-haired girl. Sakura looked up startled at Ino, expecting it to be Ibiki for some odd reason. Hey, you okay? Ino asked, knowing that it wasn't a good question, but what else could she say? No, Sakura whined. Naruto and Sasuke were fighting again, but this time was the worse. I don't know what's wrong with either one of them. Ever since Naruto changed, Sasuke's been worried about him. And now Sasuke's changed too, thanks to Sakura paused. What happened, Sakura? Before we got to the clearing? Ino asked gently. However, a kunai embedded in the ground in front of the two girls from one of the shadows of the room. Classified. An Anbu appeared and disappeared just like that, leaving the two girls shivering at knowing that could have easily been aimed at a vital part of their bodies. I guess I can't tell you. Sakura whispered. Ino put an arm around Sakura. Fine, then let's at least deal with what we can. Ino wiped a stray tear from the younger girl's cheek. Sakura wiped the rest herself and grew quiet, hoping that Ino would at least feel the same way as her. Ino, on the other hand, was going to try to explain this to both Sakura and herself. She didn't really understand the meaning of all this, and especially the things she was feeling lately, but she needed to make heads and tails of it. Right there and then, she was going to open the door to a new part of her life. Sakura, Naruto has changed, and maybe you don't realize it, but it's for the better in some ways. And Sasuke, well, he hasn't changed at all. And I'm not talking about what happened in the clearing. Well, what? Sakura gasped. What do you mean Sasuke-kun hasn't changed? You're not stupid, Sakura. Haven't you once ever wondered why Sasuke is so cold to us? Why he never agrees to go out with us, even when we're not acting like rabid fangirls? Ino held back a chuckle now that she was able to admit that. Oh my god. Ino, Sasuke-kun is not gay. Sakura blurted loudly, drawing others' attention. Ino paused, turned red, and then decided to laugh loudly. Sakura beat an eyebrow, glaring angrily at the blonde head. Are you serious? That's not what I meant at all, haha. Ino wiped her eyes as Sakura pouted and blushed as well. Although, I wouldn't put it past him. By now, everyone else was listening and joined in on the Yamanaka's mirth. Even Niji stood with a small smirk on his face. That's not funny, Ino. So what did you mean then? The pink-haired preteen demanded angrily. Ino took a few more moments to calm down before continuing. I meant that Sasuke isn't as great as you and I made him out to be in our imaginations. He's always been cold and he acts like he doesn't want anything to do with us. You're on his team, so you spent more time with him, and you said it yourself. He's the same as he was in the academy, probably worse. The only person he actually opens up and talks to is Naruto, but even that's starting to wear thin. That's not true. Naruto is always bugging Sasuke-kun, so Sakura stopped herself, finding that she was once again saying something that sounded pretentious. She shook her head and actually thought about what Ino said. No, I'm the one always bugging Sasuke-kun. What else? Ino urged, finding everything she was saying dead true. However, after Sasuke, both Ino and Sakura's paths took huge turns in opposite directions. He finds me annoying. He gives Naruto far more respect than me because he deserves it. Naruto never did anything to me and I treated him like crap. Even now. Ino nodded. She was also someone who had treated Naruto badly while growing up. She didn't know if he did, but she remembered the time where he shared his lunch with her because she was dieting and had passed out. He was worried for her, even after she had insulted him countless times, even as he tried to help her. Naruto was a genuinely nice person, and after that event, she didn't pick on him anymore. She didn't try to get to know the older boy either, and right about now she was regretting it. Sasuke isn't all bad though. He just needs someone there to be strong for him. Sakura said, though she did show maturity by looking at the situation from an outside perspective. Instead of seeing Sasuke like a boy toy, she decided to look at him as a person and shinobi. Ino, we messed up. I messed up. Naruto, Sasuke, all of you. I bet all of you are stronger than me. I wasted so much time, and Kakashi-sensei hasn't really taught us anything. Tears were falling again. Ino, I could die here. I would have died if Naruto hadn't shown up. And Sasuke, this all just so tucked up. Ino blinked at the language Sakura used, but she patted the girl's back. She was happy that Sakura held up to her role as the smartest female genin of their class. She understood, or at least seemed to understand everything so far. Now Ino needed to start believing in everything she had told to Sakura. Sakura felt like a weight was lifted off of her chest and was now hung over her head. Realization was the first step. But, could she truly change? Or would she continue to be the same girl she was starting to regret being? But her main question remained, what could she do for Naruto and Sasuke? Hibiki walked the halls once more, deep in thought. He wanted to have something settled before Naruto and Anko arrived because that in itself would raise more questions than he had time for at the moment. He needed to do 3 things at once. So taking a page out of a certain blonde's book, he flared one hand sign and created 2 simple shadow clones. Without needing to explain to the clones, they parted ways. The first clone headed to the cell containing the AIM team, while the other clone headed back the opposite direction to speak to Sakura about just how Sasuke had acquired the curse seal. The real Hibiki headed towards the cell Sasuke was in. If you could call it a cell. It was more of a room set aside from the rest, far out of sensory of even Hinata and her Byakugan. It was deep inside the tower, several floors down, and Anbu were not hidden as they patrolled the sanctum of the floors below. Hibiki walked towards a double door with blue flames on each side. The Anbu guarding the door stepped aside and allowed Hibiki to enter, silently shutting the door behind him. Inside the room, several of the same blue flame torches sat on pillars. It was the only light and cast a dark ambience over the room. Hibiki approached the center of the room and as he walked addressed the other person besides Sasuke that was in the room. How's coming along? He asked. All I did was apply the overseal. If Sasuke can resist, he can stop the effects of the seal. However, I've never seen anything like this before. It's far from an expert seal, but it emits a poisonous chakra in the process. I can't undo it without knowing the base form of the poison chakra. Kakashi spoke while still gazing over the curse mark. Sasuke sat in the middle of what appeared to be a large seal on the floor. His shirt was off, and black marks were weaving in intricate patterns from his back, chest and around his neck. He sat quietly, leaving the other two guessing at what could be on his mind. Of course Orochimaru must have come up with some other type of monstrosity. Hell, I doubt we could even discern a fraction of the chakra without a medic nin on Tsunade's level. Ibiki spoke remorsefully, Kakashi nodding his agreement. The copycat nin knelt down and put a hand over the curse seal and applied chakra. Sasuke winced before the marks all around the mark began to recede into his skin. Kakashi-sensei Sasuke spoke for the first time since he had been brought into the tower. It had seemed as if his memory was a bit fuzzy after the curse mark had receded. "Oh? What is it?" the silver-haired man asked. "I threatened Naruto," he said low, as if telling to himself as well. It sounded like a question, and Sasuke couldn't believe he had done it. Kakashi, still oblivious to most of the situation, merely smiled. "He'll be fine. You threaten him all the time, no big deal." He waved it off. However, when Sasuke spun on him, eyes set in the Sharingan, he almost flinched. "I threatened to kill him." Sasuke spat. I wouldn't." Sasuke grit his teeth and clenched his fist as he held in his anger. He wanted to strike the Jonin. Out of all the times Kakashi had dismissed Naruto, this may have been the worst. It always irked him that Kakashi showed favoritism, even if it was towards him. Even if Sasuke had forgotten at some point, he and Naruto were merely rivals, not bitter enemies. From the way Naruto was looking at Sasuke lately, they both had forgotten. But after his run-in with Orochimaru in the Forest of Death, he remembered what happened during their fight against Zabuza and Haku. We're supposed to protect each other. Kakashi glanced back at Ibiki, who said nothing and watched the scene play out. Kakashi sighed, knowing that he was won his own with this one. Sasuke, Naruto's bounced back from a lot worse. Don't worry yourself about it. Neither heard Ibiki sigh as Sasuke snapped on his sensei. Bounced back from worse. Bounced back from worse. Who the tuck says that? Sasuke clenched his fist until they bled. You call yourself a sensei, but all you ever do is train me to use my Sharingan, and that's rarely. We haven't had a team assignment since we've come back from Wave Country, and that was last month. Me, Naruto, and Sakura barely see each other, and when we did go to train, you always showed up late. What happened, Hatake? Weren't you the one preaching about how those who disobey the rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than that? Sasuke groaned and clutched his neck with one hand, but he didn't let up on Kakashi, even with the worried look he was leveling. When Kakashi reached out to touch him, Sasuke roughly smacked his hand away. Now I tell you something that I can't even stand to remember, and you say it's not a big deal. Fine then, Hatake, what if you threaten to kill someone you care about and have full intentions on doing just that? What if you would have succeeded if your sensei was a neglectful, perverted bastard? Sasuke's anger slowly began to fade. The pain from the curse mark and overseal, putting too much strain on him to continue ranting. Sasuke, fuck you, Kakashi. He said just above a whisper as he took several deep breaths. Where is Naruto? He asked Ibiki, completely dismissing the Jonin in front of him. He had nothing left to say to him. On his way to the tower. Ibiki answered. And did you admit to threatening Uzumaki, Naruto? Sasuke flinched at Ibiki's cold tone. He looked down, not wanting to be reminded of that. Before he could answer yes, Kakashi stood up. Ibiki-san, you must know that the curse seal forces the will of Orochimaru upon the user. Stop it. Sasuke yelled out. Stop doing that. If I was Naruto, you wouldn't have tried to make an excuse. Sasuke, that's enough insubordination. Ibiki spoke much more calmly than the situation seemed to need. His gaze, however, made Sasuke cement his mouth shut, though he did continue to send glares towards his sensei. Ibiki looked right into Kakashi's eyes when he spoke. As your former Anbu captain, I'm highly and utterly disappointed and disgusted with what I just heard and witnessed. At the tone, Kakashi instantly dropped to one knee, his fist on the ground and head down. Forgive me, sensei. You know what you were taught, Kakashi. You had me and the fourth Hokage himself teach you. I don't understand how you could have turned out like this. Ibiki sighed once more, finding himself doing that a lot that day. As for the curse seal. From Anko's report, it does enforce a part of Orochimaru's will on the victim, however, it's only to strengthen their darker thoughts. If that person was to have a pure heart, it's theory that the curse seal wouldn't work. Sasuke's eyes dilated at that. So that means Ibiki nodded grimly, finally releasing a kai that he had been building since speaking with Fu earlier. The two members of Team 7 seemed to shrink under the massive weight. Somewhere deep inside you, you truly wanted to kill Naruto. As the full circle began to slowly reach its end, Ibiki, the clone, found itself once again in the Omegaker team's holding cell. From what he heard, the Jonin senseis were just arriving. The Hokage would most likely be on his way as well, but to throw Orochimaru off, he would be the last to arrive. The clone frowned at the fact that it could still get a migraine, even if it wasn't the original copy. When it entered the room, it paused, taking in the scene. "Damn it, Train. Leave them alone." Yuryu shouted from the wall on the left, right next to the door. Train stood on a chair, seeming to be taking a monster pose, as he once again used his Dojutsu. Looking to the corner, he found Fu and Kin huddled together, shivering under the gaze of the boy. "What the hell is going on here?" Ibiki boomed, startling Train and making him lose his balance on the chair. He tottered for several moments before the chair gave in to vertigo and sent him tumbling backwards to the floor. "Ouch." He whined and opened one eye to see an upside-down Ibiki. The Anbu head captain looked around when he heard a snicker. When he realized it was coming from the Anbu watching and guarding the room, he turned hard glares on them all, halting the laughs and instilling a moment of awkwardness. When he looked back into the room, all three AIM genin were sitting in their seats with their hands folded on their laps, and Kin sat next to Yuryu on the floor in the same position. If Ibiki didn't know any better, he would have sworn he could see angel halos over their heads. "Sir, she's awake," Train said, sickeningly sweet-like. "I can see that," the clone replied with a small growl. It rubbed the bridge of its nose in annoyance, though he had to admit the sight of Train toppling was quite comical. But this wasn't a moment to be joking around. "I'm not going to beat around the bush. I have questions for you, and I want honest answers. If I believe you are lying, I will escort you to the T&I headquarters, and trust me, you don't want to go there." Kin nodded her head rapidly after paling at what Ibiki had just said. "What was the condition of Uchiha Sasuke when you attacked his team?" "He was unconscious after receiving Orochimaru's curse seal." Kin blurted out without hesitation, getting shocked gazes from the AIM team. "Orochimaru? The Orochimaru of the Sannin, Orochimaru?" Train called in awe. "So that's what that powerful chakra was," Fu mumbled to herself. Ibiki, for what he hoped would be the last time that day, sighed. He hadn't expected the girl to just come out and say it like that. If it weren't for the fact that he needed answers fast, he would have dismissed the Omegaker genin. However, he would just hold them in contempt with the information, should they try to release it to the public. "How do you know Orochimaru did it? Are you working for him?" "Yes, and no. Orochimaru is the Kage of Itagaker, and now that I'm in your custody, I have no plans on returning to him. As far as he's concerned, I'm dead or will be if he sees me again. He destroyed the orphanage I was staying in and kidnapped me and a lot of the other children as well. So that's why she's singing like a canary," Ibiki thought. He once again glanced at the AIM team to see them soaking up knowledge like sponges. He would need to question them once more to make sure what was being said did not leave that room. "Is there anything else?" Ibiki asked, his headache slowly going away as the girl was far more compliant than he expected. It made things so much more easier. "Yes," Kin stated looking down. She began to go into detail about the upcoming invasion on Konohagakure that was supposed to take place within a month's time during the finals of the chunin exams. She told them only what she herself knew, seeing as she wasn't important to the plan itself. Hell, Orochimaru didn't even think she was worthy of getting a weak version of his cursed seal. "Sir, the team from Omegakure's Jonin sensei is here," the Anbu at the door called. "Send him in." The door opened and the AIM team's eyes lit up. A man wearing a long red trench coat buttoned from top to bottom with 2 rows of buttons stepped into the room. He had hair that defied gravity just as Kakashi's, but was platinum blonde, like Ino's. Over his eyes he wore fire orange shades and was eating a meat bun. The AIM team face planted as the cool look was instantly thrown off. "Damn it, Vash-sensei. Don't you ever stop engorging yourself." Fu called with a pulse mark on her forehead. The man inhaled the last of the food and smiled. "Nah, Fu. It's too loud, I can't see you." "That makes no sense." She cried again. "Excuse me." Ibiki interrupted loudly. Vash faced the Anbu leader with the same smile. "Oh, I'm sorry. Hello, my name is Vash Strife, I'm this team's." "I know who you are." Ibiki stepped aside, letting the genin know they were just about free to go. "Your AIM's infamous Vash the Stampede. Your reputation is almost as high as our own copycat ninja." Vash beamed at the praise. "However, I need to make this clear here and now. What was discussed in this room is highly confidential and business of Konoha. If a single word is uttered once you set foot outside of this room, you will be considered a national threat and the full charges will fall on the Jonin sensei." Vash's smile was frozen on his face, but his students could see that he was sweating bullets. They groaned at the man. "Sensei, we won't talk. We understand that this is Konoha's business. Actually, if we could speak with your Kage, we would like to get permission to ask for aid from our own Kage." Train said, once again being serious. Ibiki almost smiled. The AIM team was showing loyalty and level-headedness that was missing from a lot of the Konoha genin. Outside of their antics, the team was completely cooperative and almost pleasant. He would grant them that request, as it also would show how the bond between the Leaf Village and Rain Village was faring. I'll see what I can do. In the meantime, follow the Anbu and prepare for the next part of the exam. You are to act as if nothing has changed. Yes sir. All four said. Ibiki rose an eyebrow at Bash and finally began to understand where the team got its quirkiness from. The team marched out of the room following an Anbu. What about me sir? Kin asked. Ibiki eyed the girl with a smirk that would even make Anko squirm. You're dead remember? And since you technically don't exist anymore, how about I get you acquainted with the Anbu force? Chapter end. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video, peace out.